Today I'm chatting with Sanjay Sharma, this year's recipient of the O&E Distinguished Scholar Award, recognizing lifetime achievement. What an accomplishment. Could we start with you introducing yourself, Sanjay?
Yeah, I'm Sanjay Sharma, and I am the Dean of the Grossman School of Business at University of Vermont in Vermont, US. And I am a Canadian citizen. And I've been, moved to US about 5.5 years ago, but I've been in Canada for about 20 years. I worked I got my PhD from University of Calgary. And then I worked on the East Coast at St. Mary's University in Halifax, and then at Wilfrid Laurier in Waterloo. And then during the time I was at Wilfrid Laurier, I was the Canada Research Chair in Organizational Sustainability. That was one of the first chairs, Canada Research chairs that went to business schools. Until then, most of the CRCs went to health sciences and natural sciences. There were very few in social sciences, and amongst the social sciences chairs, there was even a smaller set in business schools. So this was one of the earlier chairs. And then I was, after my stint at Wilfrid Laurier, I was the dean at the John Molson School of Business in Montreal at Concordia. And I've been here at University of Vermont for over 5 years. This is my second term as dean at University of Vermont. Before I worked in academia, which has been now, 24 years. I worked for 16 years with multinationals. And I was country manager for multinational in a couple of African countries. Before that, I was country manager in a couple of Asian countries, so managing all the operations for them. So, that's my background, essentially.
Fantastic. A really varied background and a lot of accomplishments. Can you tell us a few words about your experience with the O&E field?
Yeah. So I have been in the O&D field almost, I feel, from the beginning. I would say that the people who were there before me were Paul Srivastava and Ian Mitroff. They were the visionaries in terms of thinking about the natural environment as essential to business, as core to business, and bringing it to business. So they called a caucus I think it was in 1992 that they called for a caucus at the Academy of Management meetings. I wasn't there. I hadn't even started my PhD at that time, so I was still working in Africa. But as soon as I joined the PhD program in 92, I got very engaged in a listserv. So there was a not an official listserv amongst Academy of Management members talking about why the national environment should be an essential component of business. Paul Srivastava was talking about incomplete organizations. He called it castrated organizations, which did not account for their impacts on the natural environment and their embedding in the natural systems. And at that time, the people who got engaged in that conversation were, of course, Paul and Ian, but also and to some extent John Jeremiah, but a few PhD students, and the PhD students were myself, Monica Wynn, Mark Starrick, and Gordon Rance, and there were a couple of other PhD students. I never heard from them after the mid-1990s. I don't even know where they are. I think they're not in academia. But there were just about 4 or 5 of us and a few senior scholars. And so we were involved in that conversation. I got really pulled into this conversation because of my work experience, where I felt that organizations had a major negative impact on the natural environment and also social impact. So I was interested actually in an integration of social, environmental, and financial metrics in business. And so, and that's also steered my dissertation. I was looking at corporate strategies, but I was really very interested in looking at corporate strategies and the development of capabilities and managerial interpretations to see how organizations could integrate sustainability, or at that time more environmental thinking into their strategy. So in 1994, I attended the BPS Doctoral Consortium at Dallas, Academy of Management at Dallas. Although I had been a participant in the O&E discussions on the unofficial listserv, it's at the Dallas meetings that I, met for the first time face to face Paul Srivastava and many of the other PhD students, and I got to know them. And I felt that, I was more at home in this group than I was at the BPS Doctoral Consortium, although I attended that. And so we actually in the 1994 Dallas conference, and this is really interesting because in those days, the Academy of Management conference used to be 3 days. The scholarly conference used to be 3 days, and the PDW used to be 1 day. It's the flip right now. The scholarly program is so small and the PDW is so long. So I had a symposium. We had a symposium accepted at the AOM meetings. It was myself. I don't even know if you know Louis Martins. He's, I believe, at UT Austin, and Minna Halme, whom you may know. And that was a symposium essentially around environmental issues in organizations, in strategy, etc. And we actually did put together an unofficial program. We didn't have, O&E did not exist. It was an interest group. We had an interest group meeting, but we put together an unofficial program of the interest group in the sense that we pulled sessions in BPS and in OMT and in MOC and all other divisions and which related to the environment, and we printed out a little program and we distributed it. In 1995, we had a first official O&E program as an interest group. The program chair was Mark Starrick, and the All Academy speaker was an O&E speaker, and Paul Srivastava arranged that speaker. It was Anita Roddick from Body Shop. And this was in Vancouver, the 1995 AOM meetings, and we just had the 20th anniversary of that O&E program last year. And after that, as you know, the history is probably more well established. We had the interest group meetings, then we became a division. I was PDW chair in Toronto in 2000 and the program chair in Washington, D.C. in 2001. And this is probably just before we became a division from an interest group, because there is a waiting period until you apply for division status. And during this period, in the early days, I've held all the positions. I've been on the internationalization committee, I've been on the membership committee, I've been on the integration committee, you name it. So I've been in the governance of the division, and I have practically attended almost every academy conference and participated in the program. And another organization I was involved with in early 2000, I worked with Alberto Aragon Correa at University of Granada to create Gronen. So in the early 2000s, we established Gronen to bring scholars from North America and Europe together, to bring different perspectives together. North American perspective is more kind of quantitative, empirical. European perspectives are more descriptive. And so we wanted the two scholarship communities to talk to each other.
Oh, fantastic! It sounds like a really interesting insight into the early days of this field.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the award you just won.
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me to tell you about it, but I guess.
Or what it means to you, because I saw you
yeah,
tearing up a little bit at AOM this year.
Well, it means a lot to me because, for me, my academic career has been devoted to ONE. Right from the beginning, as a PhD student, I took a lot of risk. In fact, my committee told me that I would, except for one committee member who encouraged me, the rest of my committee members told me that I would never find a job in academia. I would probably, my best bet would be to join Greenpeace and pursue a career in environmental NGO. And there was no place for me in academia because environmental issues were not a part of business and would never be. But fortunately for me, one of my committee members, Harry Vredenberg, who is at University of Calgary, he encouraged me and he supported me. And he also taught me a couple of very valuable lessons because, there was, at that time when I was at Calgary, there was some sort of received view that we should submit papers to ASAC. And our main conference is ASAC, and, we should publish in CJAS, and, that's our main journal. And Harry encouraged me to do the best. He said, go to the best conferences, go to the Academy of Management, aim for the top journals. And, if you're publishing in the top journals and you're going to the top conferences, then, you're automatically, in ASAC, or you're automatically in CJAS, but you have to aim for the best. And that's what I did. And I passionately believe that I should, do my best to pursue the highest quality of scholarship. And as a result, I think I was pretty successful because of my passion for the subject and my curiosity in generally trying to understand how organizations adapted. Why were some organizations more able to integrate, environmental thinking into their decision making and build capabilities and build strategies around it versus others? I won the Best Dissertation Award in 1996. We did not have an ONE Best Dissertation Award. So I won the SIM Best Dissertation Award. That was the closest to the topic. Because for a long time, initially, while I was going to the AOM, I was also going to IAPS. This was the only conference where we had a community of ONE scholars, and we had our own track, ONE track. And won, Best Paper Awards at the Academy of Management, won Best Papers Award at ASAC, was able to publish in top-tier journals, Academy of Management, SMJ, etc. And this is, of course, I believe it was my passion. This is what I wanted to do. I also, and this might go to my, advice to young ONE scholars going forward. I was not afraid to take risk, and I was not afraid to do research or pursue scholarship that was not in the mainstream. The second aspect was that even in my teaching, I started teaching core strategic management, but I wasn't afraid of bringing in a lot of sustainability and environmental strategy and environmental capability stuff in my own research and research from our network of scholars into my strategic management course. And, what happens is it's a risk. Your colleagues in the department probably find it not conventional and a little, strange that you're bringing in all these topics. There is a standard kind of a format to teach a strategy course. But what really happens is that the students, when the time is right, and the students love it, and the students want more of it, and then that spins off into courses very specifically focused on environmental strategy or sustainability. I also started teaching in the early, not even early, I think kind of late 1990s, a course on base of the pyramid, getting students to build projects to address poverty and inequality and build, business models that had an ROI while addressing poverty and inequality issues. So I feel I have kind of dedicated my life to the ONE field. For the last 10 years, I've been a dean. This is my 11th year as a dean. So my scholarship productivity for the last sort of 10 or 11 years has been much lower. I have very little time. But during this time as a dean, I have had the satisfaction of influencing business curriculum at a different level. So at Concordia, I was able to, I raised money to build a center for sustainable enterprise, the David O'Brien Center for Sustainable Enterprise. David O'Brien, an alumni of Concordia, is the chairman of NCANA and RBC. So he gave us the funding. I hired Paul Shrivastava to lead that center and introduce a few courses in sustainability. But at Vermont, I have done much more. So we actually have sustainable business as a core that runs through our entire curriculum. So everyone gets exposed to it. We also have developed a new MBA program, which is in its third year, called Sustainable Entrepreneurship MBA program, which is about building new ventures to address global sustainability challenges. And it's a program that's been reinvented from the ground up. We don't have any conventional courses. Or all the courses are taught with our corporate partners that are trying to build sustainable ventures or are in this domain. And our partners include companies like Facebook and Google and PepsiCo and Ben & Jerry's and Green Mountain Coffee and Novo Nordisk. And in building this program, I also hired Stuart Hart from Cornell to lead this program. And I believe, built truly one of the best, not one of the best sustainability program in the world. We were ranked number 4 last year, but I believe we should be number 1, and hopefully we will be, in the next couple of years. So I feel, in many different aspects in my research, in terms of institution building, working as a foot soldier in ONE and then leading it and then building Gronan, building curricula, as a Canada research chair and then as a dean, I feel that, I have made contributions to the ONE field. And I didn't expect to be nominated and win the Distinguished Scholar Award, especially considering last 10 years I haven't been very active in my research. But it was really wonderful to get that recognition from my peers, and I'm very humbled and touched.
It was a special moment at AOM this year, for sure. You've given some advice to scholars and those coming behind us, behind you. Any other final bits of advice to ONE members?
So, one of the things that I have begun to feel over the last few years, and this is a discussion we had in early days in ONE, before we became a division, while we were an interest group, and there was a lot of discussion about, we should pursue a division status when we were entitled to. There is a certain number of years that you have to remain an interest group before. And there were some folks who felt that, if we became a division, we would become institutionalized. We would become mainstream like the academy. And I didn't feel we would. We would continue to be path-breaking, do research that kind of revolutionized or spoke to management and organization theories and brought new perspectives. But when I reflect on those discussions, I've begun to feel maybe, the people who argued against division status were right. Because I've begun to feel over the last several years that, with few exceptions, a lot of the research is, if you take, an environmental variable out of most of the studies, it's very mainstream strategy research or OB research or OT research. And I have felt that there's been very little, new ideas. That risk-taking element is gone. A lot of the junior scholars are doing very good quality empirical work. The quality of the work is very high quality in terms of, their literature review, their building their theoretical model and doing their empirical work and analysis. But it is very incremental. I don't think we are making, any leaps of knowledge creation. There is no new idea. There are no new ideas emerging, whether at the ONE division at the academy or at the Grossman, which again I helped set up. Rather than I'll be, very controversial. Rather than hoping that the bringing together the North American and European scholars would lead to a more opening out of perspectives and visions for the North American scholars in terms of bigger issues and theoretical frameworks. I think the European scholars have become more like American scholars, very narrow empirical studies, very incremental. And so I feel that I'm a little worried about, where will the new knowledge come from to help transform business and industry and public policy? Because we have become very, very incremental, and there are very few studies that are path-breaking. And I feel that for a young scholar who takes risks and makes the leap, I think the opportunities are huge. And I think a lot of the top-tier journals are hungry for really new perspectives and new ideas. Journals like Academy of Management Review, if there is something really new and interesting, I think it's going to go very far. And I think this is time. And maybe, a part of the responsibility is also with senior scholars, because we need to mentor and work with junior scholars, and we also need to create avenues for them to publish new ideas and new research. So that's what I would say. The second thing I would say is that I often hear junior scholars say that it's a lot easier now than my day, because we had to begin by teaching conventional courses, conventional strategy or conventional OB or conventional OT, while being interested in, natural environment and organizations and doing that kind of research. And I had to figure out a way, and so did, many others like Stuart Hart, and Mike Russo, by the way, is going to be here tonight. He's visiting us for the next 4 or 5 days. We had to find a way to bring in, sustainability from the back door or from the side and then build it up. I think there are mainstream courses now. So I would suggest that, young scholars try and create synergies between their research and their teaching, and try and figure out how they can, do their teaching in this research domain, because that's where they add the most value. They don't add value while teaching concepts that have been developed by others, but they add value by bringing in their research into the classroom. So I would suggest that they take more risks and do that.
That's great advice. The gauntlet has been thrown down, Sanjay, to future scholars. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about your experiences.
Great. It's my pleasure, Brent.